Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for taking time out of your day to attend our session here, which is the ROI of recognition, care, and compensation. I am honored to be presenting with my friend today here, Jaimie from Colorado, who's going to introduce herself in a second. And my name is Brad Griffith. I work with the Oklahoma State Regents for Higher Education and serve as the sort of statewide OER lead person to help champion some of our efforts here. And a lot of what we have done within open educational resources has focused around online education. And we've been able to leverage a lot of the momentum that we built up, especially since COVID, to really augment both of those initiatives at the same time. And so one of the things that I will start off by mentioning is that I was originally brought on to work on open education initiatives by an organization called the Online Consortium of Oklahoma. This is a membership funded organization that our institutions pay dues to, including Oklahoma State University with my colleague back there, Dr. Kathy S. Miller. But ultimately, we've been able to work collaboratively across the state to really make a case for investment in open educational resources, but also recognizing the work and the achievement that happens whenever you are trying to build momentum within this world. Part of the other efforts that we have now as well is a permanent project fund for open educational resources. This has allowed us to do things like annual grant fund projects. So we're able to incentivize faculty now in the adoption and development of OER textbooks for their courses. We've also been able to incentivize things like training, and I'm going to talk some more about those examples here a little bit later on. But it's been just amazing to see the progress that we've been able to make together. Having resources coming from the state, which means a lot, but we're also going to talk a little bit today about some of the other ways that we need to emphasize recognition, care, and some of the other elements that happen with this work, because putting money into it is not always enough. We can have money all day long, and we're not still may not reach the outcomes that we desire through some of these open education initiatives because of the labor, that has to happen, the care that we've talked about, and the heart that we've talked about here that's expected out of everybody that participates in this area. So I'll turn it over to Jaimie for a brief introduction from her end.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Jaimie Henthorn. I also work at a system. And one thing that I want to emphasize is that the two of us are in a certain position to recognize and provide sometimes that compensation and encourage campuses to do so. Recognition piece comes from awards. That's one thing I can do. If there's one thing I can do, I can give an award. There's not much else. Sometimes my hands are tied. I'm not on a campus. I don't have direct contact with students or necessarily faculty or even campus administration without going through my points of contact on the campuses directly through OER channels or up through leadership and through. So what that does give me, though, as well at System, is a kind of a bird's eye view. I can see things from outside and make suggestions that are strategic, and that's another piece that I leverage. I put just my open and OER involvement. So I have been running what is called the Open CU Initiative for now 4 years for me, but it's been around for 5 years. It's all 4 of our campuses meet bi-weekly. We've met on the same day twice a month for 5 years. And that collaboration and coordination and constant communication and community helps a lot. You can imagine our next agenda is already stacked with all the notes I'm putting in from this, all the books we're going to read and all the things we're going to talk about and initiatives we're going to start. And then I also run an award there at the system that I'll talk about more. And I served on the OER Council for 4 years, both as chair and vice chair for a single year. So I've got a question about why you are here. I'm going to ask this as a reflective question to make sure that we have time for our student voices that are going to be coming in on this meeting momentarily. But I use the term ROI. And then after I attended Against Hope with DeRosa, just yesterday, feels like the other day, I realized I'm using maybe a capitalist term to talk in a community that doesn't want to use capitalist terms. And I don't mean return being bottom line, right? It can, and sometimes, money talks, right? Even here. But what is the R to you? And I'd like you to think about that for a moment, reflect on it. I want you to check back in at the end. see if we can bring any information to light for you that either does take you more towards goals you have now or enlightens you to other goals you may have. Anything to add there, Brad?
I just have to obviously add the glaring obvious fact that we're talking about 5 R's most of the time with OER, and this is another R to add to that mix. And I completely agree. It is another R, but sometimes it is the one that can be the catalyst or it can be the initiative killer at the end of the day. And again, that R, I think it differs for all of us. It differs for every stakeholder that you have that works within open education, all the way from our system chancellor, who is concerned about budgets and outcomes, success rates, credit hours enrolled, and all of that stuff, all the way down to the individual faculty members in their classroom that are concerned, are my students actually achieving these learning outcomes? Are they doing what I intended them to do by sitting through this learning experience with me that I've designed?
All right. And then I added this slide this morning, actually, in the wee hours, why we are here. We're going to show you some concrete examples of recognition, care, and compensation. Before we get concrete about it, I also want to share some of the underlying inspiration that keeps me going. Two people I really look to are Catherine Cronin and Laura, forgive me with her last name. Zernowitz. I stumble on it every time. I encountered them last year at the Open Ed 23, and this year we're talking. I think this year they spoke about a polycrisis. That's very different than talking about higher education for good and asking people to envision what they would like to see in their own spaces. And could we talk about dignity, well-being, and flourishing? And that's what we are here to talk to you about, that we have time and resources to dedicate to those things. And what is for us could be for you in your own contexts. And with that, we'll move on to the first of our three sort of main points, and that's recognition. And so I've listed an objective here and then some suggested return on investment that we've seen. And then we can just keep going on to the next slide. So you can keep these in mind and keep in mind, these are just examples, right? So I'll illustrate these examples now. So we do something called the OER Champion Award. And one of the points I pointed out was that it's an opportunity to communicate with leadership, and it's an opportunity to honor our faculty who win the award, one from each campus. We'll add a student award this year, and we've also started taking on teams. So if you have a team of people, remembering we're not siloed, we're not alone in these endeavors. But the picture on the left, that's our president with our awardee, Cecilia Wu, who has been at this conference and presented on Tuesday. He comes to the award, he listens actively, and he asked a very vulnerable question while he was handing the award to Teresa Connolly, who is also here presenting at this exact same time in a different room, who's doing a Z degree in nursing, no small feat, right? So she's working towards that. And he says, I don't know what a Z degree is. Can you tell me? Standing in front of everybody, holding a microphone, looking at her. And we've since made like a badge that says, what's a Z degree? Inspired by him. That was at the state. So that vulnerability that he has is really appealing. And people will come from far and wide to shake hands and receive an award from the president. Again, calling on my own resources, something I have to give. I also want to highlight that awards can be moments for morale boosting and inspiration. And that's for the students. 1 second. So I'll just wrap up this point that so we had a group from the math department that were working steadily and carefully on bringing really interesting OER to their students in really interesting ways, not just through textbook, but using cloud-based apps such as Jupyter Notebooks to get students working in code to bring alive the course materials in math. And they're still doing that. And now they're working towards a Z degree. And some of that came from the seminal moment for that was Chelsea Bowley saying, why aren't you doing a Z degree at the award ceremony? And them saying, tell us more. So these are really crucial. Just as we're all getting together as community, I suggest you do that for your own folks. And then, Brad, do you want to finish up recognition or shall we move straight to the students?
We can come back to my recognition. I think we can go to the students if they're ready. Yeah, I saw Jake.
I think they are.
Sure.
So do you want to?
I can pull the screen share down if you want. Or
Oh yeah, let's do that. That'd be great. We have Irving as well.
yes.
So briefly, we have I'll let these students introduce themselves, but we have Jake Smith and Irving Reyes from different institutions in Colorado, and they're here. They've been asked to prepare, looking at a few questions about their own experience with recognition, care, and compensation in their experience with OER. So can we start with a brief introduction? Jake, let's start with you. Do you want to introduce yourself and talk about your connection to OER?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me. I was the PR intern at MSU Denver. Basically, I built a PR plan to make faculty more aware of their resources and how to bridge the gap between OER and then what it would take for them to adopt OER. And of course, there's certain just finding the shortcomings across all the different departments. I worked with Dr. Reagan, who I think is in attendance, and yeah, that was my involvement.
Thanks, Jake. And Irving, can we hear from you? Same questions, introduction and connection to OER. Irving, I think you're muted. That's okay. That's okay. I can ask.
Sorry about that. I have no idea what was happening there. Hello, everyone. My name is Irving Reyes Bravo, and I was the PR intern for University of Colorado in Colorado Springs. I was given the opportunity to help Dr. Leanne George copy edit and create alternate text for her images in her Introduction to Orbital Mechanics textbook. It was a great opportunity, and I was very grateful to be a part of it.
Fantastic. And we have a couple of questions for you. I'll ask a question or two, and then we'd love questions from the audience as well. We'll run a mic. Back to Jake. Jake, could you talk a little bit about the working environment you were in and perhaps then the compensation that you received for your work?
Yeah, absolutely. I worked closely with Dr. Reagan and then Professor Sarah Walters. She was a PR professor at MSU Denver, or is. We met every Monday and just kind of drafted a plan together. Dr. Reagan was really, really helpful in putting down all of the thoughts that she had in her head so that Professor Sarah Walters and I could organize them and put them into a PR perspective for her. The compensation was, it was Denver minimum wage, which was like 18 something, but in comparison to other internships, it was pretty on par. Not to mention, it was really helpful for me, and I didn't mind the pay because it was something that I really wanted to do. OER, like I've been involved sort of in OER since I was at community college, so it was nice to be able to work on it as well.
Great. Thanks, Jake. Irving, I'd also like to hear your working environment. I think was a little bit different as you were working directly on an OER with your instructor. Could you talk a little bit about the dynamics you had there with your the faculty member, and then also how you've leveraged that experience since then?
Of course. I actually met Dr. Leanne George through my instructor, Professor Vay Harold. And I was pursuing at the time my minor in technical communications and info design. And it was in her it was in Professor Harold's technical editing and style class where I was given the opportunity to be a copy editor for Dr. Leanne George. This was considered as our final project for the class, so I did not receive compensation as Jake did, but I did receive, I guess you could say, credit. Dr. Leanne George put my name as well as the names of team of copy editors in her latest edition of her book. I no longer have access, so I cannot confirm. But to our last correspondence, that's what she said she would do.
Great. Thank you, Irving. Are there questions in the audience for our students? Mm-hmm.
I love questions.
Thank you for sharing the examples that you have so far, but I want to kind of ask you a question for the future students. What would you recommend for recognition, care, and compensation going forward?
I would say that it's very important to be aware that you're going to have to communicate with various different kinds of individuals, whether that be fellow students, instructors, or authors. So I think it's always important to state what your final goal is and what you hope to receive, if not achieve from that. And as long as you keep your objectives clear, I think you can't go wrong. That's my 2 cents.
Jake, anything to add?
No, I agree with Irving. Pretty much, I got all the recognition that I needed. Dr. Reagan still regularly invites me to attend. I'm notoriously flaky, so I don't always make it to the events that she has. But yeah, I think as far as like the change that I was able to make, and then setting up the next intern for her as well, I think that was a lot of really good recognition. And the pay, like I said, I mean, it was an internship that paid well enough. So for me, that was good enough for me.
Are there other questions? You still have a few minutes with the students.
I'm in the chat.
Well, thank you both so much for being here. Really, truly appreciate it. Your perspective is honored, and we honor your time. And thank you very much for joining us. You're welcome to stay for the rest of the presentation, or I know at least one of you has to get to class.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you for having me.
One moment.
So just a reminder, we're continuing the conversation about recognition. And much as Jaimie mentioned, as Colorado's system does awards for open education, we do a lot of different versions of recognition of the work that's happening in open, some of which are compensated, some of which are not. And I'll mention a couple of these that you're seeing on the screen. So the round icon images that you see there are actually icons of digital badges that are available for individuals that are interacting with our open education initiatives. This is something that we began a couple of years ago as a kind of add-on to what we were trying to accomplish with workforce micro-credentials, and using this technology of digital credentials, which we have access and issue these badges through Credly, to actually put in the hands of our faculty, staff, and students the same thing that we're trying to put into the hands of students that are taking these workforce programs, and actually recognizing there are real tangible skills that are happening in the development of individuals whenever they embark on this journey of open. And so a couple of those that I'll mention on the screen here that you see are OER 101 and the OER Champion digital badges. So these are actually completion badges that are awarded when individuals do our 2-part micro-credential for open educational resources. That's an adaptation of the course that was produced by Texas. So these are also incentivized. So faculty and staff and student researchers, I would argue, that are working on open education projects can actually receive up to $250 of an honorarium from us in order to complete both of those. We also have a badge that's called the OER Contributor Badge, and this is for individuals that are actually publishing OER on our Pressbooks platform. So once they publish a book, we actually have the ability to issue them a digital credential that acknowledges their publication and actually ties to it electronically, so that if they're sharing this within their CV, maybe on their LinkedIn profile, if somebody encounters that credential, they would actually see this live link out there to the open textbook that that individual had built. We do also issue digital badges to our OER grant awardees. These are faculty that are receiving funds from our board, the state regents, to complete open textbook projects. So while they are receiving compensation for those awards, we have an MOU. They can get up to $4,000, $5,000 for some combined projects. We are also still trying to recognize, again, through this credentialing ecosystem, the work that's taken place there, and actually give them something that they can put in their portfolio. When we do summit presentations, we have an annual summit that will come up on November 1st. Presenters get badges for that, again, as that form of recognition, even when we can't pay them. The best part, though, and I think one of them that is probably the bigger part of what I enjoy about doing in my job, is every year in April, we actually do a series of online excellence awards. And in 2023, our Council for Online Learning Excellence, which is the lead group over OER initiatives in our state, put forth a proposal to create an Open Education Impact Award under this category. And so my colleague back there, Dr. Kathy S. Miller, was the inaugural winner of that award in 2023 for the work that she does with the Open Ed initiative at Oklahoma State University. And then you can see the bottom right there is actually the most recent winners from this last April, which were a composition team from Rose State College, which is a metropolitan community college in the Oklahoma City area. I really want to linger, though, on these online awards because there is so much that happens in order to actually conduct an official award within our state. So this is not something where our council is just issuing the badge and inviting them up. These are actually entered into public record. So our award process will open November 15th, and we'll take nominations through January. And after that, our chairs of the council will actually review those proposals and select the award winners. From that point, I will begin drafting news correspondence, so press releases, formal agenda items that actually include narratives that go into record specifically about these projects. And these are paragraphs, 10 sentences a piece. And all of this actually culminates in a state regents meeting. So our public meeting, and letters go out to presidents, vice presidents, the individuals that are receiving these awards, and they all come to the state regents meetings, and we present these awards in person to the board and actually read the narratives out line by line there. So it takes 20 minutes sometimes to get through, but I make them sit there and relish every single word of it because I want them to hear, again, with Rose State College, they've impacted millions of dollars in savings through the students that they serve there, in addition to increasing learning outcomes in their courses. And it's important. It is very important that boards know that that impact is happening, because this is what makes my case for them to continue the line item in our budget that supports these interactions here. So it's a wide spectrum, from compensated recognition, but there are so many other things that we can do. And I would encourage you to look at those existing structures, look at the technologies that you have access to, explore what that means for open in this realm of recognition here.
Is there a monetary award?
For the Online Excellence Awards, not yet.
My question.
Yeah, so Jaimie asked if there's a monetary award for the Online Excellence Awards, and I said not yet. And I say that because it's out there on the table. Even our chancellor actually asked me whenever it was her first year to present these awards, are these funded? And I said, no, not yet. So it's on the table.
I will add just the technical piece that we offer. I think it's a $650, and then we make sure the benefits piece and everything gets covered. So it just goes directly into extra pay for our faculty.
That's something that's a little sticky, and I'm happy to talk about that with any of you all sometimes, of the pay going to faculty and staff on campuses. There are some paperwork regulations that I can help you navigate, and Jaimie can too on that end, to make that happen, because it can happen. You just have to find the right way to bend the language in your MOUs to do it. Okay. So I have the amazing privilege of working with a statewide OER council, and our membership ranges on a general day from 25, I would say, to 40 members sometimes if we're super active there. And one of the things that has just been so impressive to me is the ability of these individuals, Kathy included, to rally together and to do a landscape analysis of what resources do we have? Are we able to really serve all of our constituent institutions on an equal basis? I will tell you, in working in a system like Oklahoma, we have schools that are as small as 800 FTE, all the way up to schools that are over 30,000 FTE. And you can imagine sitting in a position like mine and seeing that wide spectrum of resources available, people being available. My gosh, the number of hats that those of you working at smaller institutions wear, it's incredible. And the time that you can find to actually devote to open education is incredible. And so our committee realized that, recognizes that, and saw it as something that was being a hindrance to some of the smaller institutions who had faculty that are ready and willing to do the work of open, but they don't have the infrastructure, the people, to be frank, to actually sit with them and do the consulting and help them build these projects out. And so what that group initiated, and again, it is still in formation, I think we're perfecting it, is a series of office hours that are collaborative. And so we have volunteers from that OER council that have banded together and said, we're going to try to offer a consistent opportunity to where faculty from any institution, any instructional designer, any student researcher might want to come in and talk about open education projects. And we all have an equal set of skills and understand what the opportunities are also available at the state level, so that there's nobody that's missing out on those opportunities. Because again, there are some small community colleges where we have 3 OER librarians, but there are other regional universities where there's 1 librarian that is trying to accomplish things with open. That person doesn't have the capacity to do that. So you really can, again, band together, pull resources together. I hate to say it, but using the care and the heart of the people that work within this community to relieve those teams. Yeah. So that, again, I said everything that's on this side right here. Sorry for that. But this is all, it's organic, it's grassroots, and it's facilitated by the members of our Online Learning Council through that OER subcommittee there.
And then our last point is compensation, right? And so I think here we are usually talking about, where there's no way to not talk about dollars when we're talking, or giant gold coins in this case. And I want to point out, I want to tell one story about how student cost savings can result in permanent OER FTE. So it sounds mysterious, and it should. But then I also want to bring up some awareness around faculty incentivization for and compensation for creating OER, even learning about OER, doing peer review, anything to get through the door, and then rewarding the work as possible from there. What that's led to, if you sort of in the reporting out of it, is we've had faculty that have gone from awareness, initial awareness gateway, sort of walk in the door, get $50 gift card for attending an awareness event, to creating OER and getting mini grants through our system-wide program, to a state award, a very large state award, working towards a Z degree, and even considering like the open textbook pilot program, seriously looking at, would I be eligible for federal funding? And that all grew organically but it grew through the mini grant program and those very small initiatives that we start with to get people going. And then also paying students, which we've already talked about. Brad will relay one more example of student honoraria if you can't provide like a paid position. And then so this journey towards this OER librarian position, again, I'll refer back to our state funding. So we give away $1 million in state funding annually in Colorado currently. That's up for review this next year. So cross all your fingers for us, please. We'll see about that. But we had a library intern who was doing OER work at our health sciences library at CU, and she was in the position, and the position she was in as the intern was grant funded by the state funding. And she was there for 2 years. And then at the end of her 2 years, there was also retirement on the on the library staff as she was, and she was considered for the position. And as she was chosen and hired for the position, they've written OER into the position with FTE that's funded permanently as a result of her internship being funded by the state funding. The state funding comes from proving cost savings to students. And it's just, for me, it's just this direct line. If we can, and then if we go back, these automatic textbook billing or these inclusive access programs threaten that for us. So, it's an ecosystem, which we'll get to, but this is how, this is one success story where we've been able to provide FTE, permanent FTE based off of student savings.
So one of the things I wanted to elaborate on this slide is about the grant programs that we operate for the OER textbook adoptions. We've done this program now, I believe we're in our 3rd year, and it's changed over time and largely based upon the feedback of the institutions that we work with. And there was one particular change this year that I had to think about for a while and kind of massage the agreements that we have. And just to kind of elaborate on that a little bit. So when we award grants from our state office, there's a document, a memorandum of understanding that's required for us to be able to engage with an individual faculty that's working at an institution within our system. When they complete their project and receive the funds, we send the money to the institution, and the institution has to disperse the funds from there. They have an option at the end of the day. I will tell you, I've even had one institution that had a faculty member leave and chose not to disperse the grant award to them. But faculty can also choose to maintain the funds within their own department if they want to use it for travel or whatever else. The new element for this year, though, was really the result of my statewide council communicating to us that we had an issue of the unseen work, the unpaid work that was happening with all of these projects, and kind of a crisis message there that it's not sustainable. You want us to keep doing all of these projects, but there's an element here of the work that is not being recognized. And again, it's that group of librarians, instructional designers, graduate assistants, researchers that are working on these projects with faculty. And so we came up with what I think is a supremely creative way to try to compensate this work. And so the way that our grants actually operate is that faculty are compensated. It's a kind of per project or per course grant at institutions based on the level of work being a whole adoption of existing resources, remix and revision. And then the 3rd tier, the most expensive or highest investment for us, is the full authorship of at least 75% original content. On top of that, faculty can also add up to 3 teaching collaborators on their grant. So this adds an additional $500 per collaborator that's going to work with them and teach with the same OER that's being funded with the project. Additionally, each of the projects that we award can add 1 project collaborator add-on bonus for $250 that is not restricted to being a faculty member. So that can actually be for a student that's working on a project, a librarian, an instructional designer. But if there is somebody else that's involved in that project that is helping with curriculum development, alternative text for something in press books, for example, then that box gets checked and they can add another $250. Where this all kind of boils down is that the faculty tell us how much each individual participating in this project is getting paid. And so they can work with that team. They can work with the students or the librarians that are involved in that project and assess the level of their involvement and decide we're going to completely split this award 5 ways so that that person gets $1,000. Or again, if it's a little bit lower level, something simpler like just alternative text on images in a book, they can customize that. But at the end of the day, all of that is wrapped up in this memorandum of understanding, and I'm really excited to see how much that's actually leveraged going out this year. And so I think again about those individual librarians, at my smaller institution, if they have 10 projects out there, there's a potential $2,500 that's been added on as incentive funding for them participating in that project. And I hope that that just moves that needle of investment at these individual institutions to show more capacity can be had here.
Great. Thanks, Brad. We're coming up on time. So what I'm going to do is show you that there is one additional video student testimonial. If anybody is trying to make a case for that at their institution, this is a really fantastic additional resource. She was also a PR intern with Dr. Reagan. And so there's a video there with that testimonial. And then we also have an ecosystem slide here, and it highlights how we can talk about OER ecosystems in many different ways, right? But in this way, this was the information that came through. It'll come through if you click. We arrived at this from a survey we did at our Colorado conference one year. And so this very much fits into the OER ecosystem, and you can't have a healthy ecosystem without recognition, care, and compensation. This sort of worker care piece is essential. And then lastly, I think some people are trying to grab a shot of that. And then I want to ask you, I want to bring you back to your beginning. And so you had, what were your R's, but then what's your next step? Like, what's one step you'll take? And also jot that down so that you're not thinking, I've got these goals, they're not actionable, maybe, but what's one step that you take? One person you talk to, one action you take. Reflect on that and take a note. And then that's us at time, but we'd love to take questions or have a conversation right after. Thank you.